Although the Doqi continent had never experienced an invasion by the extraterritorial evil races, Xiaoyan still felt gratitude toward the myriad phenomena Heavenly Palace. If you enjoy my way of explaining and storytelling, don't forget to like and subscribe. It really motivates me to keep creating. Picking up from where we left off, this was no ordinary realm. It was a super heavenly realm, a supreme dominion situated in the northwestern reaches of the boundless Great Thousand World. Vast beyond mortal comprehension, the great heavenly realm stretched across nearly 100,000 immense continents, each one expansive enough to cradle countless civilizations, ancient clans, and immortal legends. Its structure was majestic and precise. 4 outer heavenly realms, north, south, east, and west, formed a grand quadrilateral around the heart of this domain. At the very center lay the most illustrious and powerful territory of all the central heavenly realm. And within the central heavenly realm, there existed a continent whose name alone carried weight across countless dimensions, the central heavenly continent. This land was not merely vast, it was the axis around which power, ambition, and destiny revolved. Upon this continent stood 5 superpowers whose brilliance dazzled the entire Great Thousand World. They were known collectively as One Gate, One Hall, 3 Palaces. These 5 forces represented the pinnacle of cultivation, influence, and authority on the central heavenly continent. The One Gate referred to the ancient and unfathomable ancient heaven and earth gate, a power whose foundations were said to date back to primordial eras. Its disciples were as rare as phoenix feathers, and its techniques were whispered about in awe. The One Hall was the equally formidable primordial divine hall, a force whose strength and heritage rivaled that of the ancient heaven and earth gate. Legends spoke of their mastery over primordial energies and laws that predated heaven and earth themselves. As for the 3 palaces, they stood in perfect equilibrium with one another, neither willing nor able to completely dominate the others. They were the enigmatic and profound Divine Void Palace, the serene yet unfathomable Taiking Palace, the mysterious and all-encompassing Myriad Phenomena Heavenly Palace. Each palace was a colossus in its own right. Together they formed a delicate balance of power that shaped the destiny of the entire continent. At this very moment, within a desolate mountain range, somewhere deep inside the central heavenly realm, the calm of the barren landscape was suddenly disturbed. Space twisted, the air distorted like ripples across a silent lake. Then, 6 figures stepped forth from the warped void, appearing amidst the jagged peaks as though descending from another dimension. Leading them was an elderly man, clad in immaculate white robes. Though his posture appeared relaxed, the aura radiating from him was vast and overwhelming, like an endless ocean concealed beneath still waters. This was not the aura of an ordinary cultivator. This was the unmistakable presence of a true heavenly sovereign. Behind him stood 5 figures. Among them was Xiaoyan, his gaze sharp and steady as he surveyed the unfamiliar land before him. At his side was He Yuanyun, along with 3 other experts whose cultivation had already reached the formidable Earth sovereign level each one. Possessing strength no inferior to He Yuanyun himself, such a lineup was enough to dominate entire regions. Not long ago, in order to win Xiaoyan's allegiance, or perhaps to secure his future potential, the Hall Master of the Western Heaven, Hall Shuiyuan, had agreed to lend his support. 3 Earth Sovereigns, 1 Heavenly Sovereign. This was the formidable assistance granted to Xiaoyan by the Western Heaven Hall. So this is the central heavenly continent. Xiaoyan's eyes swept across the endless expanse before him. Though his vision could not fully encompass its immensity, his instincts honed through countless life and death battles told him something undeniable. This continent was far larger than the Luo God continent of the Luo God Great Domain in the Western Heaven realm. The land beneath his feet felt heavier. The spiritual energy in the air was denser. Even the laws of heaven and earth seemed deeper, more complete. This was the true heart of power within the Great Thousand World. At his words, the white-robed elder clasped his hands behind his back, his long sleeves fluttering lightly in the mountain wind. "The Divine Void Palace," he said calmly, his tone steady yet filled with quiet authority, stands as one of the 5 peak forces upon this continent. He paused briefly before continuing. Its foundation and strength are no weaker than the Luo god clan at its peak. The elder's name was Wu Wanlong. He was the Grand Elder of the Western Heaven Hall, and today he had personally escorted Xiaoyan into the most dangerous and powerful domain of the Central Heavenly Realm. Ahead lay the land where legends were forged, where heavenly sovereigns clashed, where the true rulers of the Great Thousand World determined fate itself, and Xiaoyan had just stepped onto its stage. Hearing this, Xiaoyan's expression darkened. His fingers slowly curled into tight fists, knuckles whitening as a surge of killing intent flickered through his eyes. He lifted his gaze toward the distant horizon, toward a sky vast and indifferent. And when he spoke, his voice was no longer calm. It was cold enough to freeze the air. "I don't care what so-called top-tier power it is," he said, each word sharp as a blade. "Anyone who dares lay a hand on my woman had better be prepared to pay the price." The mountains around them seemed to grow still. Even the spiritual energy in the air trembled faintly under the weight of that unwavering resolve. Wu Wanlong glanced at him, his aged eyes revealing neither surprise nor reproach. Instead, there was a trace of appreciation hidden within their depths. He spoke in his usual calm tone, as though recounting an old memory long buried in time. "Several hundred years ago, I broke through the shackles of my native plane and descended into this central heavenly realm. Back then, my cultivation had just stepped into the heavenly sovereign threshold." His gaze turned distant as if looking through layers of time. "Here I made an enemy, the young master of the ancient heaven and earth gate." A faint chill entered his voice. "We clashed over certain matters. In the end, grudges were formed. By now, he has likely stepped into the heavenly sovereign realm as well. The ancient heaven and earth gate, one of the 5 supreme powers of the central heavenly continent, a force whose foundation was so deep that even heavenly sovereigns would hesitate before provoking it. But fate is rarely one-sided," Wu Wanlong continued. "Although I offended the ancient heaven and earth gate back then, I once saved someone." He paused briefly before adding, "The daughter of another overlord-level force, the myriad phenomena heavenly palace. Her name is Xianxia. Several centuries had passed since that event. Given her talent and status," Wu Wanlong said slowly, "she has likely already ascended to become the palace master of the myriad phenomena heavenly palace." At these words, Xiaoyan's eyes sharpened instantly. "Senior, you mean?" A faint smile curved at the corner of Wu Wanlong's lips. With a casual wave of his sleeve, space before them rippled violently. The void split open like a curtain being drawn aside, revealing a swirling spatial passage filled with silver light. "We will first pay a visit to the myriad phenomena heavenly palace," he said calmly. "After that, we will settle matters with the divine void palace." His gaze turned slightly toward the distant sky, as if sensing invisible fluctuations spreading across the heavens. "I imagine the ancient heaven and earth gate has already detected my arrival." A heavenly sovereign descending into the central heavenly realm was no small matter. The fluctuations of such power were impossible to conceal from other beings of the same level. "The myriad phenomena heavenly palace lies several hundred million li away from here," Wu Wanlong added. "We cannot afford to waste time." Without hesitation, he stepped into the spatial passage. Xiaoyan exchanged a glance with He Yuanyun and the other 3 Earth sovereigns. No words were needed. They followed closely behind. The spatial passage closed silently behind them, and the barren mountain range returned to its desolate stillness as if nothing had ever happened. The myriad phenomena great domain, one of the 8 super-regions of the central heavenly continent. It was a land of boundless prosperity and terrifying strength, where countless sects flourished like stars scattered across the night sky. Experts emerged endlessly, and powerful factions vied for dominance in an eternal dance of ambition and survival. Yet above all those sects, above all those countless forces, there stood a supreme existence, one of the 3 divine palaces, the myriad phenomena heavenly palace. It resided at the very heart of the Myriad Phenomena Great Domain, the Myriad Phenomena Mountain Range. The mountain range stretched across the land like a colossal primordial beast lying in slumber. Peak after peak rose into the heavens, piercing through clouds that shimmered with dense spiritual energy. It encircled millions of miles of vast territory. Ancient forests thrived between towering cliffs. Rivers of spiritual energy flowed like silver dragons across the valleys. Within the depths of the mountains, countless defensive arrays shimmered faintly, their power enough to suppress even Earth sovereigns. At the very center of the range above the highest peak, a magnificent celestial palace floated amidst the clouds. Golden light radiated from its halls. Runes of heaven and earth flickered around its perimeter. Its aura was vast, profound, unshakable. This was the Myriad Phenomena Heavenly Palace, a force that stood shoulder to shoulder with the Divine Void Palace and Tai King Palace, a power that even the ancient Heaven and Earth Gate treated with caution. And at this very moment, a ripple quietly stirred in the distant void above the mountain range. The calm of the Myriad Phenomena Great Domain was about to be disturbed. At this moment, outside the vast perimeter of the Myriad Phenomena Mountain Range, the sky suddenly trembled. Space rippled like the surface of disturbed water. A crack of silver light tore across the heavens, and from within it a spatial passage slowly unfolded. The surrounding clouds were pushed aside by invisible pressure as 6 figures stepped out one after another, their presence causing the very air to grow heavy. They were none other than Xiao and his group. The central heavenly continent was unimaginably vast. Even for experts capable of traversing space itself, crossing several 100 million Eli was no trivial matter. Though they had relied on spatial passage after spatial passage, it had still taken them nearly half a day to arrive at their destination. Before them stretched an endless expanse of towering mountains. Peak upon peak rose like ancient titans standing shoulder to shoulder. The mountain range extended beyond sight, its undulating ridges resembling the spine of some colossal primordial beast lying dormant across the earth. Wu Wanlong stood at the front of the group, hands clasped behind his back, his white robes fluttering faintly in the high-altitude wind. Beyond this Myriad Phenomena mountain range, he said calmly, lies the Myriad Phenomena Heavenly Palace. He narrowed his eyes slightly as he gazed ahead. But even to cross this range will still require about half an hour. Half an hour. From the mouth of a heavenly sovereign, that was an incredibly short time. Yet the fact that even they required half an hour to traverse it was proof enough of just how immense this mountain range truly was. Xiao closed his eyes, briefly extending his spiritual perception outward. Almost instantly he felt something unusual. "The air here," he murmured, opening his eyes slowly. "It seems to be filled with some special kind of power." The energy in the atmosphere was not merely dense spiritual energy. It carried layers, changes, endless fluctuations. It felt as though countless natural phenomena, wind, thunder, fire, frost, light, shadow were subtly interwoven within it. More importantly, this power seemed to form a vast invisible barrier stretching across tens of millions of miles, silently protecting both the mountain range and the heavenly palace hidden deep within. Wu Wanlong nodded faintly. "That is the power of Myriad Phenomena." He gestured lightly toward the mountains. "The terrain of this range is unique. It naturally forms a heaven and earth spiritual field. The spiritual energy of the surrounding regions is continuously drawn here, nourishing this land and allowing it to flourish with endless vitality." His voice grew slightly heavier. "In ancient times, when the extraterritorial evil races invaded this region, a transcendent expert once used this entire land as an array plate." As he spoke those words, even the surrounding wind seemed to quiet. He activated a supreme heaven and earth grand formation. Xiao pupils contracted slightly. Using an entire mountain range, millions upon millions of miles, as the foundation of an array, that was no ordinary formation. That great battle, Wu Wanlong continued, slowly shook the central heavenly continent. 2 evil emperors' existences comparable to heavenly sovereigns descended upon this land. The air grew tense. One of them died in battle. The other fled heavily injured. Wu Wanlong's eyes glinted faintly. But the price was not small. Of the two heavenly sovereigns who stood against them, one perished, and the other was gravely wounded. Silence fell over the group. He Yuanyun and the three Earth sovereigns exchanged shocked glances. As for Xiao, waves of astonishment surged through his heart like a storm. After spending a year in the Great Thousand World, he had come to understand clearly what the title Heavenly Sovereign truly meant. Such beings were the absolute apex of cultivation within the Great Thousand World. They were rare beyond imagination. Even within ancient clans with foundations spanning countless eras, heavenly sovereigns were leader-level figures, pillars capable of suppressing entire domains. Yet this heaven and earth grand formation, once activated, had directly slain an evil emperor equivalent to a heavenly sovereign. Its terror required no embellishment. It was an existence capable of altering the balance of an entire region. Xiao slowly exhaled. If such a formation still existed in full strength, even heavenly sovereigns would think twice before trespassing into the myriad phenomena mountain range. The Great Thousand World was vast beyond measure, and the deeper he ventured into its core territories, the more Xiao realized. The true foundation of these ancient superpowers was far more terrifying than anything he had previously encountered. Ahead of them, the myriad phenomena mountain range stood silent and immense, like an ancient guardian that had witnessed countless epochs of blood and fire. And now, they were about to step into its domain. Speaking of which, Wu Wanlong said slowly, his gaze still fixed upon the vast mountain range before them. 10,000 years ago, the myriad phenomena heavenly palace extended its hand to support the lower planes. He paused slightly before adding, so in a certain sense, they stand on the same side as us. Xiao brows furrowed faintly. Supported the lower planes? He asked. Isn't aiding the lower planes something only those who have already broken through their planes' shackles and ascended into the Great Thousand World would concern themselves with? From Xiao perspective, once a cultivator shattered the restrictions of their native plane and entered the Great Thousand World, they would naturally focus on their own cultivation path and survival in this far more brutal environment. Why would they interfere with matters below? Wu Wanlong let out a soft chuckle. You're thinking too simply. His tone was gentle, but his words carried weight. Do you truly believe the lower planes could resist the extraterritorial evil races on their own? Xiao fell silent. The mere mention of the extraterritorial evil races caused a faint chill to pass through the group. In the primordial era, Wu Wanlong continued, when the extraterritorial evil races launched their full-scale invasion, it was not only the Great Thousand World that faced annihilation. The lower planes were equally targeted. His voice deepened. Had the lower planes and the Great Thousand World not joined forces at that time, neither side would have survived. The wind seemed to grow heavier. That war, Wu Wanlong said quietly, was a true cataclysm. Entire domains collapsed. Countless races vanished from history. He slowly raised two fingers. The tide of that war was only turned because 10 heaven-defying experts appeared, 10 beings who possessed supreme Dharmakayas. Even He Yuanyun involuntarily inhaled sharply. Supreme Dharmakaya, that was a legendary realm that stood above ordinary supreme manifestations. It was said that those who cultivated such Dharmakayas could shake the very foundation of heaven and earth. Of those 10, Wu Wanlong said 4 came from the lower planes. Xiao eyes trembled slightly. 4 from the lower planes. That meant the lower planes were far from insignificant. They stood at the forefront of the battlefield, Wu Wanlong continued. Their power pierced through the heavens, suppressing evil emperors and tearing apart demonic domains. Although that war ultimately ended in the defeat of the extraterritorial evil races, do not mistake that victory for total annihilation. His eyes grew solemn. Over the past tens of thousands of years, subtle movements have been increasing. I fear an even more terrifying war is brewing. A suffocating atmosphere enveloped the group. After the Great Thousand World tasted victory, complacency gradually spread. Wu Wanlong said coldly. Taking advantage of that arrogance, the extraterritorial evil races shifted their focus. They launched repeated vicious assaults upon the lower planes. Xiao Yan's fists clenched slightly. He came from a lower plane himself. To him, those words were not distant history. They seek to corrupt from below, Wu Wanlong continued. To erode foundations, to cut off future talents before they can ascend. But he added, a faint glint appearing in his eyes, the Great Thousand World is not blind. There are still clear-minded existences, ancient beings who understand that if the lower planes fall completely, the Great Thousand World will eventually stand alone. And once that happens, defeat will only be a matter of time. There are only two paths they can take. He raised one finger. First, dispatch experts to support the lower planes, suppress invasions, guard key planes, nurture future geniuses. Then a second finger. Second, awaken those who slumber within the Great Thousand World. At these words, even Xiao Yan felt a tremor in his heart. Awaken. Those who slumber. Wu Wanlong's voice lowered. In ancient forbidden lands beneath sealed domains, within the deepest parts of certain clans, there are beings who chose self-sealing after the primordial war. They sleep to preserve their vitality, and when the next great calamity arrives, they will awaken. The image of ancient figures rising from endless slumber sent chills down everyone's spines. Wu Wanlong continued, in today's Great Thousand World, the primary forces opposing the extraterritorial evil races are two major factions, the ancient god clans and the myriad spirit divine clans. Xiao Yan frowned slightly. Myriad spirit divine clans. His understanding of the Great Thousand World was still limited. Wu Wanlong nodded. The Great Thousand World is not composed of humans alone. He extended his hand toward the endless mountain range below. There exist countless spirit beasts, creatures born from heaven and earth, nourished by spiritual energy over millions of years. Among them, the most exceptional bloodlines are known as divine beasts. His voice carried a trace of reverence. True dragons, phoenixes, killins, kunpeng, heavenly rock, 9 nether birds. Each divine beast race possesses strength comparable to ancient human clans, and the most powerful among them form what we call the myriad spirit divine clans. He glanced at Xiao Yan. During the primordial war, several divine beast sovereigns fought side by side with the human heavenly sovereigns. They shed blood together. They sealed battlefields together. They carved their names into the history of this world together. The wind howled faintly across the myriad phenomena mountain range. Xiao Yan looked toward the towering peaks ahead, his gaze deepening. The world he had stepped into was far larger than personal grudges, far greater than a single palace. Behind every faction, behind every ancient power, there lay 10,000 years of blood alliances, betrayals, and unfinished wars. And perhaps the conflict he was about to step into was merely a small ripple before the coming storm. In the myriad beast record spirit, beasts are ranked upon the earth list, while divine beasts ascend to the heaven list. Wu Wanlong explained steadily. His voice carried the tone of someone recounting ancient truths etched into history. The 10 most powerful divine beast races upon the heaven list are collectively known as the myriad spirit divine clans. These were not mere beasts. They were sovereign bloodlines born from the primordial chaos of heaven and earth. Each possessed innate divine abilities, terrifying physical bodies, and inheritance memories that stretched back countless eras. True dragons that could overturn oceans, phoenixes that bathed in heavenly fire, kunpeng that soared across realms in a single breath, heavenly rock that tore apart space with its wings, and many more whose names alone were enough to shake the courage of ordinary experts. Together they formed one of the 2 greatest pillars resisting the extraterritorial evil races. Wu Wanlong continued calmly. Besides the ancient god clans and the myriad spirit divine clans, there are also independent superpowers who have chosen to support the lower planes. His gaze fell upon the boundless mountain range before them. The myriad phenomena, heavenly palace before us, is one of them. Xiaoyan fell silent for a moment. So the myriad phenomena heavenly palace has such a background. At last, he understood the deeper meaning behind Wu Wanlong's earlier words. This was not merely a superpower-seeking influence. It was a force that had once stood on the battlefield of a world-level war. A force that had consciously extended aid to the lower planes when darkness descended. To people like him who originated from the lower planes that act alone carried immense weight. Although the Duchy continent had never suffered a direct invasion by the extraterritorial evil races, Xiaoyan understood clearly that such peace was not guaranteed by chance. Somewhere in unseen battlefields across countless planes, blood had been shed to maintain that fragile tranquility. Perhaps even experts from the myriad phenomena heavenly palace had once fought to ensure that worlds like his own remained untouched. Thinking of this, a trace of respect surfaced in Xiaoyan's heart. Gratitude. It was subtle but real. However, just as Xiaoyan finished speaking, Wu Wanlong's expression suddenly shifted. His gaze sharpened. He seemed to sense something deep within the mountain range ahead. A fluctuation, subtle yet vast. Wu Wanlong let out a soft exclamation of surprise. Then, a faint smile appeared on his face, and there was even a trace of joy hidden within it. Haha. It seems, he said lightly, that we won't need to sneak across the myriad phenomena mountain range after all. The others immediately became alert. The power of myriad phenomena within the air began to stir faintly as though responding to an unseen will. Wu Wanlong raised his head and looked directly toward the void ahead. His eyes seemed to pierce through layers of space, locking onto a distant presence. Someone, he said calmly, is inviting us in. The moment his words fell, the sky before them trembled. The vast power of myriad phenomena that blanketed millions of miles began to part like clouds dispersing before the sun. An enormous spatial corridor slowly formed within the mountain range, its interior shimmering with layered light and ancient runes. It was not a forced opening. It was a formal reception, an invitation from the master of this domain. The myriad phenomena heavenly palace had already sensed their arrival, and instead of hostility, it had chosen welcome. That's all for today's content. See you in the next part. Support me by becoming a member. It will give me more motivation. Thank you so much.